Hey, welcome back. It's Terry Denelak, Lean Transformation Guide that's helped startups, SMBs, and Fortune 500 companies deliver products faster to market. Today, I want to talk to you about kickoffs. I remember the first time I kicked off a multi-million dollar project. It was a bit of an experience for me. It was December. I remember that day clearly. And my boss messaged me, on Slack and told me that we had a new client that wanted the project to start as soon as possible. There was no time to prepare for the proper kickoff, so we'd have to be creative on the spot, like immediately the next day. I was going to be leading the engagement, so I needed to wrap up the internal mini projects I was on and get ready to go. As I read the message, the sense of like giddiness and excitement came over me. It was going to be my first big client project, so that was just something I've never done before, and it was exciting. And at the same time, it was a bit nerve-wracking. Even though it was like a first opportunity to prove myself to my boss and to prove that I knew what I was doing, I was still nervous because this was a really big project and for an important client. So we were it was a lot riding on it. But I had a lot of questions. So like, what were the main goals for the project? How big was the client team? And like, what would we be doing? How long would the project be? I remember that night I was hard time falling asleep, thinking about what am I going to do? What am I going to say? Kind of my thoughts racing. And then like towards the middle of the night, I kind of planned everything out. What I was going to talk about, what I was going to do, and then how I'd introduce myself, the team, and all of that. And then I fell asleep. The next day, I got a message from my boss, and the client pushed the kickoff by a week, so we had more time to prepare. So what a relief! Now I had a little bit more time, so we can kind of get everything lined up and ready to go. Usually before we do the kickoff, we have a preparation. We have about a week or more to prepare for the project. And this in itself is like a mini project, mini engagement where we sit down with the team who's going to be involved and spend some time kind of thinking about the client, the problems, and all of that kind of stuff. What we usually talk about is the business goals, the business, the product goals, what the client wants to build, project goals specifically to that project, that engagement, any assumptions that we may have about us or the client's outcomes, timelines, and of course the culture. One of the things that kind of always threw me for the loop was the difference between goals and outcomes. And a lot of people use them interchangeably, and for my own sanity, my own understanding of the differences are, I think of goals as like outputs, something, a concrete result that you get in the end, like a deliverable. Here's what you get. For example, a goal could be like a shopping cart you built, deployed, ready to go. That's the goal. We want the shopping cart. The outcome is like an intangible result. So it's either a behavior change or new behavior or state change, something changed. So for example, an outcome would be a user being able to buy something online. So the output is the shopping cart, the outcome is being able to buy things online. And it's an important distinction because when you think about goals, a goal is like, I want this, I want the shopping cart. But the outcome is I want the people to buy products online. And how you get to the outcome might be through different goals. And sometimes if you think about just the goals, you're limiting your view. You're limiting your understanding of what's of your options, rather, your alternatives. But if you think about outcomes, all of a sudden you open up the road wider and you can see maybe you can take a different path. So those are the things that we discuss. And the one more thing that's kind of rarely mentioned, but it's the culture that of the client team that we're going to be working with. Every organization has its own culture, and how you connect, how you approach each other is going to have a big end result on whether the project succeeds or not. So you need to be aware what the culture is like, how similar or how different it is to yours. And if it is similar, then it's great. Things might go smoothly. If it's different, you have to figure out a different way to approach it, a different way to win the day, basically. So it's always important to talk about the client's culture before the project begins, so you know where you stand. So in my first big project, we ran the preparation week, got all the answers that we needed prepared, and then we spent some time planning out the kickoff. And the kickoff is usually a day event, and it has, you can do it in person or on Zoom. If it's in person, it's a little bit easier because you don't get the Zoom fatigue, and you get to see people, feel how they respond to what you say, and kind of make changes to directions. And I've done both in person and Zoom. I prefer in person, but if you are on Zoom, then the structure is the same. And in this case, it was a Zoom workshop kickoff that we had to do. And before we do the kickoff, we plan it out. We create an agenda, and then we send it out to the client, to the stakeholders, to make sure that they're aware of what the day is going to look like. And the day is structured in this manner. So we have introductions, goals and outcomes, stakeholder map, project vision, project context, risks and mitigations, and then logistics. To break down quickly each of these things, and the introductions take 10, 15, 30 minutes, sometimes an hour, depending on how big the team is. And it's very simple. You introduce the project, usually get the main stakeholder to talk about the reasons why we're here, introduce the team in general, and then we'll go around and then introduce ourselves to each other. And many times the introductions are like very formal, and hey, my name is this, and here's my role. What I like to do is I like to make it a bit more involved, make it a bit more interesting. So we'll ask a question at the end, something like, what was your favorite movie that you've watched recently, or your favorite vacation spot, or something that would kind of open up the human side of things, and you get to know the other person. So maybe you can connect on a different level. So if somebody has the same movie, maybe you can connect on that. So that was the introductions. Then we get into the goals and outcomes, and this is just a review of what the client has told us before, what the goals were, and what kind of outcomes we want to achieve. During this section, it usually takes an hour to 2 hours, depending on how long we discuss these things. We'll review the goals, and a lot of the times when the sale happened, it happened a few months before. Maybe the goals have changed, maybe the outcomes have changed. So or something new was added. So you want to make sure that we reaffirm the original goals, and if there's any changes, we want to discuss them and then organize them in such a way. And then we want to define the project outcomes. So the project will have a timeline, and we can't do everything. We're limited depending on the size of the teams. If we have multiple teams, then maybe we can do a little bit more. If we have just one team, then it's a much smaller outcome. So we would take about 2 to 3 hours. We would review the business goals, the product goals, make sure all the goals are there, define the project outcomes, and then prioritize them. And the outcomes are, as I said before, is that intangible thing that you want to achieve. This gives us a bit of room to come up with better solutions, more effective, valuable solutions. And then we'll prioritize the outcomes using the impact versus effort 2x2 matrix, where you look at the outcomes saying, well, how much impact will this outcome have on the project, on the business goals, and product or business goals, and then how much effort. And then based on that, we'll pick the one that kind of the most impactful and the least effort, and work on that first and kind of go through that, because we want to deliver the value as soon as possible. Finally, before we close off the first half of the day, we do a quick stakeholder map. And this is to help us understand who is going to be involved in the project, who's going to be doing the work, who's going to be the main stakeholder, who needs to be informed, things like that. Usually this is done with like a RACI map, which is the responsible, accountable, informed, and consulted map, where you kind of put people in those little roles. We use a little bit of a different setup, which is just the core team involved and informed. So just a smaller version. So who's the core team, who's involved? That's usually the stakeholders who would need help, consulted, and then who's informed, the people who need to kind of keep tabs on the project. And then we'll do this map. Now we'll have an understanding of who's doing what, and then we can move on. So then we'll go to lunch. When we come back, we'll talk about the project vision. The project vision is similar to a product vision. It's designed so that we have a clear picture in our mind about what we're going to build during this engagement. And the way I like to think about vision statements, I know most people think about vision statements as this, this grand thing that you can never achieve, right? While it's useful, and again, it's debatable whether it's useful or not. For me, those visions are never useful because I cannot imagine it. It's not concrete enough, and I cannot recall it to mind what it is. Usually they're too long. They mean very little. So what I like to do is I like to think of a vision as like a drawing of a building rather than a drawing of the earth and space. And the drawing of a building where you can kind of visualize what the building's going to look like, where the garage is going to be, where the windows are, what the landscape's going to look like, where the car will park, things like that, right? So you clearly, when you define the vision like that, you can make it come to mind immediately. And I have a little framework that I've developed to kind of build these concrete visions for projects or products. It consists of 3 parts. 1, timeline, 2, people, and then 3, the picture. The timeline is how long will it take for this vision to come to fruition? And it's important to have the timeline rather than have this never-ending vision, because the timeline gives you concrete kind of boundaries, right? It helps you understand reality better. So, for example, you instinctively know that you can't build a $1 billion company in a month. Like, it's just very difficult, almost impossible. But it is possible in 10 years. So if you start with a timeline of 10 years, all of a sudden now you have a more realistic view of what can be built, what the vision will look like. The second one is the people, and who is this for? Who's going to be part of that vision? When you're doing a drawing of your house, your vision is your family, yourself. You maybe even put them into the drawing so you can visualize this is for my family, this is for me. Same thing goes for projects, products, or anything like that. Who is this for? Finalize, who's the final picture for? Who are you going to see when you look at that? And finally is the picture. And the picture is that drawing of the building, right? It could be a personal. If it's a personal vision, for example, it could be you in 10 years on a yacht in the Pacific, sailing, right? So that's what you want to get to. That's a personal vision. I want to be there in 10 years. Terrific. If it's business, it could be providing next day delivery for the best priced products to its customers. So in 10 years, I want to be able to provide next day delivery. That's a vision for a prime product in this example. For a project, it could be having customers buying more than one item online. So that could be a very short 12-week. In 12 weeks, I want my customers to be able to buy more than one product at a time. So that's the vision. And as I mentioned, having the vision will help you make the better decisions for your project. After the vision, we go into the context. And the context is all about understanding of what the environment is all about, right? Whether you will work in the technical field, in the product field, you want to know the technology stack, you want all the processes, procedures, kind of have an overview of them, how do you deploy, what steps are required, any support ticket systems, help systems, and all of that. When I was running the project, these are the things that we kind of talked about: integration, delivery, other teams that we're going to have to interact with, decision-making processes, who is the final arbiter on these decisions. And depending on where you are, you want to lay down as much information as possible in this situation. Then finally, the one after we've discussed the context, we want to talk about risks and mitigations. This part is often skipped in projects or just kind of glossed over because you just want to get things going. But it's important to think about the risks. In our case, we talked about 2 types of risks. It was the project risks and product risks. Project risks were related to like internal politics, cultural friction, procedures, integration and delivery. So sorry, not like bus count risks, not integration delivery. That's product. Risks that are people related. So like what could stop us from delivering this project or can slow us down? Maybe there's, somebody's going on vacation. That's a risk. Um, uh, Bus count of one, meaning like if somebody, God forbid, something happens and that person is key to, this particular section of the product, what happens then? Like it'll grind everything to a halt. So we want to understand these. We want to kind of bring them into focus and then figure out how we want to figure out the mitigations for these. Product risks are related to technology, usually much easier to address in many cases. The standard operating procedures, like how we deliver things, or whether, if it takes 3 weeks to deliver something or deploy something to production, then you want to highlight that and figure out, well, that's too long. How do we mitigate that? Once we've defined the risks, and then depending on your project, there'll be different types. You want to quickly categorize them using the likelihood of happening and then impact, what kind of impact it will have. Prioritize the risks to see which ones are the most in your face that's going to stop you from doing great things. That is the essence of the risks and mitigations. Once you prioritize them, you want to see if they can mitigate them. Who can help you? How quickly, how easily is it to mitigate? If something is like super important, is going to stop you, but it's hard to mitigate, you still have to address it. Once we've talked about risks and mitigations, we move on to the logistics. And logistics is very simply, it's the last section. It could take 15 minutes, 20 minutes of your day. You're probably ready to go home. What you do is you talk about how you're going to deliver the project. So your approach. You want to talk about planning your planning meetings, schedule them, what time, what day, daily check-ins, any ad hoc pairing sessions that you might want to have, any other meetings that might be important to have, how we work. So like this is how we do deliver, like this is how you deliver. Let's see how we can combine that. Usually you talk about your vacations, your time days off. We have a lot of calendar. We use Miro for this. You put a calendar on, you kind of organize everybody, put everybody on the list, and you see, well, I'm off in 2 weeks for a week, so like everybody's aware of what's happening. And talk about documentation. You talk about how we're going to communicate. If this is a remote setting, we're going to use Slack, or we're going to use Zoom. Like, what are the restrictions on communications, things like that. What project management tools we're going to use. How we're going to do reporting. How we're going to submit maybe timesheets. Maybe you have to submit timesheets. Maybe you the weekly updates to stakeholders. All of these things, you kind of pile them all into this last section, figure them out. We have a standard template, and these are the things you need to think about. And then once that's done, you conclude the day. The kickoff is complete. Sometimes kickoffs can take longer. It all depends on the quality of the organization. It depends on how much was discussed beforehand. Sometimes it gets dropped into the middle of a project or at the beginning of the project, but there's nothing really been discussed, so you don't really know how to start. So maybe you spend some time actually thinking about goals, product goals, business goals, and all of that kind of stuff before you get into the other bits. And it could take up to a week to actually get the things going. But this is the first day. Let me kind of talk about it quickly again. So you talk about introductions, goals and outcomes, stakeholder map. Then you talk about project vision, project context, risks and mitigations, and finally you finish off with logistics. If you have any more questions, you want to learn more how to do better kickoffs for your engagements, drop me a message below, book a chat with me, and I can help you out. Cheers.